August 117 AD. In a coastal town in southern Anatolia, the Emperor Trajan is dying. He has pushed Rome to the greatest size it will ever hold, and he has never clearly named his heir. 350 kilometers away in Antioch, his ward Hadrian commands the armies of the east and waits for news. Within days, adoption papers will surface under circumstances so suspicious that Roman historians were still repeating the rumors a century later, because the emperor may already have been dead when his wife signed them. 4 of Rome's most senior generals will be executed before the new reign is a year old. The largest empire on earth is about to change hands in the dark. That same month, 45 United States Marines appear on the Syrian coast. How they got there is a question left alone here. Every other question gets an answer. They have no aircraft offshore, no drones in their packs, no resupply on any calendar, and no way home. On their shoulders, they wear an eagle. Their motto is 2 words of Latin, semper fidelis. And before this campaign ends, Romans will hear them say it. Their orders are to take the Roman Empire. Taking an empire can mean several different things, and this mission needs to pick one early. Occupation is ruled out on arithmetic alone. Rome in 117 fields, roughly 30 legions, and counting the auxiliary regiments, somewhere over 300,000 professional soldiers garrisoning territory from Scotland to the Persian Gulf. Against that stands a platoon carrying perhaps 30,000 rounds of ammunition, a figure that sounds enormous until it is divided by an army. Even granting a kill with every trigger pull, 9 out of 10 Roman soldiers would never meet a bullet. The victory condition has to live somewhere else. The mission counts as complete on the day the platoon selects the next emperor and the legions obey him. It counts as failed on the day the platoon is destroyed or reduced to hiding in the hills. The fighting portion of this scenario is brief because Rome never sent legions to investigate strangers. When word reaches Antioch that armed foreigners have appeared near the coast, the governor's response is a patrol. 30 auxiliary cavalrymen under a junior officer sent to observe, question, and, if necessary, arrest. The governor of Syria who signs that order in the summer of 117 is a 41-year-old named Hadrian. The patrol closes to 400 meters, hears a sound like the sky tearing open, and ceases to exist inside a minute. A full cohort follows a week later, 500 men with proper armor and discipline. It advances in good order across open ground and loses a fifth of its strength before its commander, watching men die to something he can neither see nor name, orders the withdrawal that any competent Roman officer would order. The record is clear about what Roman commanders were. They were bureaucrats and engineers long before they were berserkers. A legate who loses 200 men to invisible thunder does what Roman generals did after every disaster in their history. He stops, entrenches, writes his dispatches, and consults the priests. The dispatches heading for Rome struggle to describe what they saw, so an accurate count is worth setting down here. 3 rifle squads of 13 Marines each, a 4-man headquarters, and 2 Navy corpsmen, since the men who keep Marines alive in the field belong technically to a different branch of the service. M4 carbines and M27 automatic rifles, M320 grenade launchers, fragmentation grenades, and 3 M240B machine guns drawn from the weapons company, each accurate past a kilometer from a tripod. And in every pack, night vision goggles running on ordinary batteries, of which the platoon owns a strictly limited number. The batteries look like the least interesting line on that inventory. They will decide when this campaign has to be over. One more problem rides with the platoon, because no one alive speaks the Latin of 117 as a mother tongue, and no Roman speaks English. The bridge is the platoon's own roster. A modern rifle platoon nearly always includes several native Spanish speakers, and Spanish is what Latin slowly became. The 2 languages have drifted apart for 18 centuries, yet agua still recognizes aqua, and amigo still recognizes amicus. Between those shared roots, prisoners taken in the first skirmishes, drawings scratched in the dirt, and the empire's professional interpreters who moved between Latin, Greek, and a dozen frontier tongues for a living, a crude working pidgin exists within a month. History has been negotiated in worse. With the priests, the real campaign begins. Rome maintained a formal bureaucracy for the impossible. Unexplained events and thunder from a clear sky above all others were classified as prodigies, reported up the chain, and answered with public ritual. Augustus himself raised a temple on the Capitoline Hill to Jupiter the Thunderer. So when survivors describe men who summon thunder from sticks, the report traveling toward Rome is a religious document as much as a military one. And the platoon, briefed on exactly this, leans into it with the discipline of men who understand their real ammunition supply. Every round fired from this point forward is a public event, staged for maximum witnesses at minimum expenditure. At a parley outside Antioch, a marksman puts a single bullet through a bodyguard's shield at 600 meters, through the shield, announced in advance, while the man holds it. 30,000 rounds spent on battle would kill a fraction of one army. 30,000 rounds spent on theater can persuade an empire that opposing these men is a form of blasphemy. One accident of design helps enormously. At rest, a rifle looks like a dark walking stick. Romans feel no instinctive fear standing near the weapon itself. So every demonstration lands as pure revelation, thunder called down by men who wear the eagle of Jupiter on their shoulders and answer in the language of Rome. Witnesses reach the conclusion on their own, and no Marine ever has to claim it. These soldiers serve some Rome beyond Rome. The platoon lets the story grow, which returns everything to August of 117, because the timing is the entire opportunity. Roman emperors were made by soldiers, and the empire's own history keeps proving it. In 41 AD, the Praetorian Guard found Claudius hiding behind a palace curtain after an assassination and simply declared him emperor, collecting an enormous cash bonus for the service. The year 69 proved it 4 times over, as army after army marched its own general toward the throne. And in 193, the Praetorians would drop every pretense and auction the empire from the walls of their camp to the highest bidder. Power at the top of Rome was a protection arrangement, and every man senior enough to matter understood the terms. Hadrian's succession is the softest such moment in a century. His adoption is contested gossip, 4 consular generals are about to die over it, and the Eastern legions he personally commands are the only force clearly behind him. 45 Marines will never replace 300,000 soldiers, and the plan never asks them to. The job is to become the deciding vote, and Roman public life hands them the leverage. Politics in Rome ran on visibility. An emperor addressed crowds, presided at games, marched in processions, and sacrificed at open-air altars in front of thousands. A senator who withdrew from public view had already resigned from power. Against a rifle accurate to 800 meters, that entire way of life becomes a killing field, and hiding from it means abdicating. So the platoon's offer to Hadrian, delivered through Greek interpreters in Antioch, stays very simple. His rivals can be made mortal in front of witnesses on any day he chooses, from distances no bodyguard comprehends. He himself can be made untouchable, guarded by thunder. The counteroffer goes unspoken and understood by everyone in the room. The same service exists for any rival claimant willing to pay more. Hadrian was, by every ancient account, one of the sharpest minds ever to hold the office. He accepts, and history barely changes shape to accommodate it, because in our timeline, his faction killed those 4 generals anyway, and he spent 20 years living down the stain. In this version, the deaths are cleaner, stranger, and credited by half the empire to the judgment of the gods. The same principle keeps the legions themselves in line without another pitched battle. A Roman legion ran on a thin and highly visible layer of leadership, 1 legate, a handful of tribunes, and roughly 60 centurions, whose transverse crests existed specifically so that soldiers could find them in a crowd. Roman command culture put those men out front, mounted, decorated, and within earshot of the line. Any legion that marches against the new order loses that entire layer to marksmen it never sees. And 5,000 superbly drilled soldiers become 5,000 men waiting for orders that no longer arrive. After one demonstration, no ambitious governor can find officers willing to stand beside him, and the platoon has converted 30 rounds of ammunition into the obedience of an army. Rome's counter to all of this is worth naming, because Rome always had one. The empire's finest weapon against dangerous foreigners was never the legion. It was the dinner invitation, poison, bribery, a fire in the night, a servant with a knife and a grievance. These ended more threats to Roman rulers than every barbarian army combined. The platoon must eat Roman food, sleep behind Roman walls, and trust Roman staff forever. Their countermeasures are the old ones, tasters, and unpredictable routines, plus the new one, which is the fear itself. For a Roman conspirator, the mathematics of betraying a man who kills from half a mile, at night, without warning, never quite add up, and the platoon works hard to keep that arithmetic unsolvable. What the Marines receive for their service is the founding of an institution. Payment in dollars means nothing here, so payment arrives the Roman way: land, citizenship, rank, and a permanent post at the emperor's side as a foreign guard, trusted precisely because it stands outside every Roman family feud. The empire would eventually invent this institution on its own. 9 centuries later, the emperors in Constantinople kept a personal guard of foreign northerners for exactly these reasons. The platoon simply arrives early. The corpsmen, meanwhile, fight the quietest war of the campaign. Popular assumption says disease destroys time travelers, and the assumption runs in both directions. And at this scale, both directions mostly fail. The Marines arrive vaccinated against diseases Rome had no names for, carry anti-malarial prophylaxis and water purification, and their 2 corpsmen manage trauma that Roman surgeons would call hopeless. Their genuine medical enemies are unglamorous ones: an infected tooth, an appendix, a compound fracture with no hospital on the planet. In the other direction, 45 healthy, medically screened adults make poor carriers for an apocalyptic plague. The pandemic that will actually gut this empire arrives on schedule about 50 years later, carried home by Roman soldiers returning from the east, with or without any Marines in the timeline. The true clock never had anything to do with disease. Batteries die within weeks, and ownership of the night dies with them. Ammunition only counts down. Every advantage the platoon holds is a wasting asset, which turns the whole campaign into a race. Supernatural credibility has to convert into institutional power before the supernatural runs out. Reputation must finish what the rifles started. By the time the last battery goes dark, the legend of the Thunder Guard has to stand strong enough that no one alive dares to schedule the test. Measured as a conquest, the mission dies in its opening arithmetic: 30,000 rounds against 300,000 soldiers. Measured as a coup, it lands inside the most exploitable succession crisis Rome ever produced, holding the one tool Roman public life had no defense against, in an empire whose own guardsmen would one day sell the throne at auction. The realistic outcome is that Hadrian rules, as he did in our history, with 45 foreign shadows standing behind him, growing rich, growing old, and guarding a secret that shrinks a little every year. The thunder was always going to run out. Rome never offered anyone a deed to the empire. It offered the purple to whichever claimant the men with the weapons agreed to protect. And, for one strange generation, the men with the weapons wear night vision goggles.